In this video, we're going to show you how to replace a backing plate on your Toyota Camry. Let's get started. Using a 21mm socket, remove the 5 lug nuts. Remove the wheel. Using a 10mm socket, remove the bolt for the ABS bracket. Pull the bracket off. Using a 12mm socket, remove the bolt for the ABS and brake line brackets. Pull the lines out of the bracket. We're going to pop this plastic clip. Pull it off to the side. Using a 17mm socket, remove the caliper bracket bolts. Pull the caliper off, and we're going to use a hook to hook this to the strut and let it hang so there's no tension on this hose. Remove the rotor. Using a 30mm axle nut socket, we're going to remove the axle nut. Using a 17mm socket, remove the nut off of the tie rod end. Ours was missing a cotter pin, but if you have a cotter pin in there, go ahead and take it out and then remove the nut. Hit the side of the knuckle near the tie rod end with a hammer. Break the tension free and then pop it out. Using a 22mm socket and a 22mm wrench, we're going to hold the head of the bolt and remove the nut. Do the same thing on the bottom. Remove the bolts. Using a 10mm socket, remove the bolt for the ABS sensor and remove the ABS sensor. We're going to pull this up kind of towards the strut and hang it up here out of the way where it's not going to get pinched, twisted, or messed up. Pull the knuckle out of the strut and push the axle through the hub. Pull the axle to the side, and then we'll have room to work on our ball joint. Using a pair of wire cutters, I'm going to clip off the cotter pin. I'm going to try and push it through, but it looks really corroded in there, so I'm going to cut off the ends of the cotter pin and then use a socket to just pull the nut off, and then we'll use a punch after to push the cotter pin through. Using a 19mm socket, we're going to remove the ball joint nut. Using a hammer, we're going to hit around the knuckle near the ball joint and release the tension on the stud. Once the tension's released, remove the knuckle. Using a punch, we're going to remove the extra cotter pin out of our ball joint stud. We tried using a punch to remove the cotter pin, and I was not successful, so I'm going to use a drill bit and just drill it out. Using a punch or a flat blade screwdriver, we're going to remove this steel insert. Go around picking up on it. Using a small hammer, go around, continually tapping. As you're tapping, try and push up and pull the collar out. Using 2 hammers, we're going to remove the hub from the bearing and knuckle assembly. We're going to use this cone and we're going to put it in the back of the hub. And we're going to use our second hammer and we're going to hit on the back of this one and we're going to drive the hub out. It's good to have something either tied to the hub so it'll catch it when it flies out, or have a barrel under it so it can fly into the barrel and not chip your floor. If you were to reuse this hub, all you have to do is cut a little channel in here and then use a punch once you're most of the way through. Tap the punch in and crack this, then you'll be able to remove it from the hub. Using a pair of snap ring pliers, we're going to remove the snap ring. Using a T30 bit, we're going to remove the bolts for the backing plate. Go around and remove all of the bolts. Remove the backing plate. With our knuckle set up in the press, we'll press out our old bearing. Remove the bearing. Install the backing plate onto the knuckle. Make sure it fully seats, and we'll go around and install our bolts. Go around and snug all the bolts down. With our knuckle and bearing set up in the press, we're going to press our bearing into the knuckle. Continue pressing until the bearing bottoms out. Double check that it is fully seated, which it is. Using a pair of snap ring pliers, install the snap ring. We're going to press the hub into our bearing. While we're doing this, we are going to be supporting this inner race on the back side using a block, and then we're going to be pushing the hub into this. If you don't support the bearing right on the bottom, you'll blow the bearing apart, so make sure it's supported in the right way. And then press the hub into the bearing. Go until the press bottoms out. Remove the assembly from the press. Install the metal ring into the knuckle. Push it into place. and then using a chisel, we're going to tap the bottom in. Make sure it's not moving, and make sure these holes are lined up for the ABS sensor, and then you're good to go. Install the knuckle. We're going to start by installing it on our ball joint. Get the ball joint nut started. Snug the nut down. Torque the ball joint nut to 91 foot-pounds. And up to an additional 60 degrees, or until the slot in the nut lines up with the slot in the stud. Install the cotter pin. Pull the cotter pin through and bend it around. Install the axle into the hub. Line up the splines. Push the knuckle into the strut. Install the bottom bolt first. This makes it easy to do the top one. Put one hand on the face of the hub, push straight back, and install the bolt. Get the nuts started by hand. Do the same thing on the bottom. Using a wrench to hold the head of the bolt, use a socket and a gun to snug down the nuts. Do the same thing on the bottom. Torque these bolts to 155 foot-pounds. Do the same thing on the bottom. Install the axle nut. Snug the axle nut down. Torque the axle nut to 217 foot-pounds. Using a hammer and a punch, stake the axle nut. Install the tie rod end into the knuckle. Get the nut started. Snug the nut down. Torque the tie rod nut to 36 foot-pounds. And then up to an additional 60 degrees, or until a cotter pin fits through. Install the cotter pin. Bend it down and around. Install the ABS sensor into the knuckle. And snug the bolt down. Install the rotor. If you have your caliper on a hook, go ahead and pull it off. Install it onto the rotor. And then get the bolts started. Snug these bolts down and torque them to 79 foot-pounds. Install the brake line into the bracket. Install the ABS wire bracket over it. and get the bolt started. Snug the bolt down. Install the plastic bracket for the ABS wire around the strut. It'll clip into place. Install the ABS bracket. Make sure this little tab's sitting in place and get the bolt started. Snug the bolt down. Install the wheel onto the vehicle. Go around and snug them all down in a cross pattern. Torque the lug nuts to 76 foot-pounds in a star pattern. And you're good to go.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.